Everything seemed to be going well. Mark and I had built the life we once dreamed of. Success, love, and family. However, the silent storm within me grew stronger with each passing day. The morning our daughter Sophia started college was going to be one of the biggest turning points in our lives. But perhaps it was also the most ruthless reflection of what we had truly lost. Under Mark's loving gaze, the house that once seemed like a corner of paradise now felt like a place filled with painful memories. Our journey together had exposed the deep cracks in our lives, cracks that foreshadowed the events that would ultimately tear us apart. But at that time, I had no idea where this irreversible journey would lead us. Before diving into my story, if you don't want your life to be turned upside down like mine, subscribe to my channel to learn real lessons from the real stories we share every day, just like mine. Also, share your thoughts about the shocking truths I've experienced in the comments. And please show your support by liking my video. Now that you've subscribed, let's dive into my story. As Mark's eyes focused on the road, I sighed deeply and sat quietly in the passenger seat. The wind swirled around our car, while my thoughts drifted back to the past. Just a few hours ago, we had dropped off the center of our lives, Sophia, at her college. This was the natural separation every parent experiences, but for me, it felt like the end of an era. Sophia's absence deepened the silence of our home, as if a part of our lives had been ripped away. Sophia had been like a planet revolving at the center of our lives, and sending her away felt like losing a part of myself along with her. Mark was the first to break the silence. "You know," he said, without taking his eyes off the road, "the house is going to feel so empty without her." "Definitely," I murmured, taking his hand. "She's always been your little princess, Mark, our princess." Mark's eyes filled with emotion as if he wished he could bring something back. However, the deep sadness in his eyes prevented him from saying more. I too felt an emptiness inside, as if Sophia's departure had taken away a part of the meaning in our lives. "I'm going to miss her so much," Mark added, his voice trembling. "She'll always be our little girl. She deserves the world." I agreed, but the emptiness inside me continued to grow. For a moment, the car was filled with silence, but it hung over us like a heavy weight. I could see the melancholy on Mark's face, but I also noticed a flicker of worry in his eyes. It was as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how to put it into words. "Have you noticed how she's been acting lately?" he asked suddenly, his voice tense. "How she's been treating you?" That question shattered any peace I had left. I quickly pulled my hand away, my smile fading. An invisible wall rose between us. "Yes, if you're not around, she completely ignores me," I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. "But when you're there, she smiles, and behind your back she gives me dirty look." This was just one of the ways Sophia had been acting lately. I wondered if Mark had noticed, but more importantly, I was trying to understand what was behind it. Mark sighed deeply. This wasn't the first time we'd had this argument. "Oh, come on, honey," he said, his voice soothing, but there was a hint of impatience too. "This change has been hard on her. It's her first time leaving home. Senior year was tough with all the pressure from those Harvard dreams. When she's stressed, she takes it out on those closest to her. Try to give her a little understanding." "She only treats me like this," I said, my anger rising. "She's never like this with you. She loves you, but me, she despises me." Admitting this truth was hard, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. I felt like I had lost Sophia's love, and that feeling was eating me up inside. Mark's eyes hardened. "Vanessa, she's still a child. Don't be so harsh. Maybe she just needs a little time. After all, you're her mother too." "Am I the one being harsh?" I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "You always defend her, but I'm always the bad guy, right?" As these words left my lips, I felt something break inside me. No matter how many times Mark and I talked about this, we always ended up in the same place. He took Sophia's side and ignored my feelings. Mark paused for a moment. Then quietly, he said, "We need to talk about this, but not now. Let's just get home." The softness in his words eased my anger, but I knew we still needed to have this conversation. I didn't want to prolong the argument either, especially now when everything seemed to be falling into place. I didn't want to ruin this peaceful moment. I pulled out my phone and quickly sent a message, desperately trying to escape the tension. "We'll be home in about 20 minutes. Let's meet as soon as we get back." A reply came a few minutes later. "I can't wait to see you, gorgeous. I'll be there soon." I felt a thrill run through me, familiar excitement dancing across my skin. 15 years of marriage, yet the promise of an impending rendezvous still made me feel like an infatuated teenager. Even in the midst of this tension with Mark, feeling this secret excitement filled me with a mix of guilt and joy. "Who was that?" Mark asked, his eyes not leaving mine, suspicion lacing his tone. "Not Sophia," I lied smoothly, the fib rolling off my tongue with practiced ease. "It was Maggie. She was asking how Paul's handling the night shifts. Apparently, he's been working on a big case lately, and she's feeling neglected." Maggie and Paul Davis were our closest couple friends. High school sweethearts like Mark and me. Paul had been the star wide receiver on Mark's football team, while bubbly, effervescent Maggie had been one of my fellow cheerleaders. We had been an inseparable foursome through college and beyond, as our relationships blossomed into marriages. She knew what she was signing up for. "Marrying a detective," Mark said with a shrug. "His job has to come first sometimes, especially when he's closing in on solving a big case." Mark's comment wasn't enough to ease my discomfort. Talking about Paul made me uneasy because the feelings I had for him had become increasingly complex over time. A mix of jealousy, anger, and other emotions I couldn't admit to had been eating me up inside. I looked out the window to change the subject. The familiar suburban landscape passed by quickly. When Mark turned onto our tree-lined street, my breath caught in my throat. There it was, the modern architectural masterpiece he had designed and built for us. Our dream home, with its sleek lines, high ceilings, and large windows overlooking the manicured gardens. But at that moment, my eyes were drawn not to the signs of material success, but to the police car parked in our circular driveway. The sight of the car rang alarm bells inside me. I knew something was wrong. When Mark parked the car, two figures stepped out of the police vehicle. One of them was Paul, someone I recognized immediately. My heart felt like it was going to stop, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. This was the moment I had both eagerly anticipated and feared for months. Trying to understand what was happening, I opened the car door. Mark got out behind me, his voice filled with confusion and concern as he called out, "What's going on here?" Paul spoke heavily, his voice solemn. "I'm really sorry, Mark," he said, pulling a thick manila envelope from the inside pocket of his well-worn bomber jacket. The dark circles under his eyes and grizzled 5 shadow showed just how much time he had been putting in on that big case. "Mark Thompson, you've been served." Paul's voice didn't waver, but the seriousness on his face told me this was anything but simple. Mark froze, the color draining from his face as he stared at the envelope in his hand. A humorless laugh escaped his lips. "Is this some kind of joke, Paul?" he asked, disbelief lacing his words. "This can't be real, can it?" Paul's eyes flickered to me for a moment before settling back on Mark. "I think you should leave now," Paul said, his voice growing more serious. "Get a lawyer and start working out the terms of your divorce. There's also a temporary restraining order. You need to stay away from Vanessa and maintain a distance of at least 500 feet. Mark took a deep breath and turned to face me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Is this true, Vanessa? Are you really leaving me?" he asked, his voice cracking. This was the moment when I was forced to face the harsh reality of what I had done. "Mark, please," I began, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't deny the truth any longer because everything was out in the open now. I had cheated on him, and now I had to face the consequences. "It's hard to explain," I said, my voice trembling. "Hard?" Mark yelled, his eyes now filled with deep pain rather than anger. "I'm not asking if you're leaving me, Vanessa. Are you telling me you've been cheating on me for years?" The only sound was the pounding of my heart. Tears streamed down my face. I had shattered Mark's trust, and now I had to face that reality. A moment when everything came crashing down. Paul stepped forward to cut through the tension between us. Mark, we don't want this to get worse. The best thing right now is for you to leave and give some time. Mark turned to Paul, his eyes blazing. Did you set this up? Did she tell you? He asked, his voice filled with the deep wound of betrayal. Paul, calm as ever, said, Mark, I'm just an officer in this situation. Vanessa made this decision and the legal process has started. My friendly advice to you is to put some distance between you and the situation before it gets worse. Mark paused for a moment, then turned back to me. His eyes were filled with devastation. Was this house, this life, all a lie, Vanessa? My heart felt heavy. No, Mark, not everything was a lie, but I got lost, and I couldn't find a way out. My words were broken, incomplete, and offered no real explanation. Mark let out a bitter laugh. A way out? Everything was set up for you from the start. Now here I am, trying to figure out how I lost everything, but you already had your plan. Those words stabbed me like a knife. I wanted to explain more to Mark, but nothing I said would matter. The bond between us had been irreparably severed. Finally, Mark turned back to the car, slammed the door, and started the engine. For a moment, he seemed to hesitate, as if trying to find something to say, but without a word, he put the car in reverse and sped away. As Mark's car disappeared from view, Paul placed a hand on my shoulder. This is going to be tough, Vanessa, but there's no turning back now, he said, his voice soft but firm. I nodded, but the waves of guilt and regret crashing over me threatened to drown me. I wasn't sure whether to look at Paul or not, knowing he had played a role in all of this too. But nothing was going to change. Mark was gone, and I was left to face the consequences of my own decisions.